With no end in sight to Israel's political crisis, a group of lawmakers there has submitted a bill to disband parliament and hold a third election in less than a year on March 2nd. Jealous? The Trump Report starts now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, welcome to the Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by Chelsea Galicia.
Hello there. Woo,
And, of
what
course,
is this?
Scott Moore.
Are we extra animated?
The S-Man. Just go with the double pointers today. For those that are listening to the audio-only version, please know that I'm just pointing, gesticulating wildly.
It's very politician-esque, you know, besides the
sure.
wave,
It's
the
you do
two-pointing,
the point, because then
the
everybody
wave.
thinks that they're pointing at them, you know. It's always the way that it feels.
The wave and point.
Anyway, lovely to see both of you on, it's we're getting closer and closer to Christmas Eve. Scott, is it impeachment Eve?
Impeachment
Where are we
Eve,
at?
yes. So I said it's a lot closer to impeachment Eve at this point.
Yeah,
so.
well, yeah, I mean, because Christmas Eve, let's see, it's 2 full weeks away.
Yeah.
And impeachment could be, what, this week?
Yeah, next week. I'd say probably next week.
And remember, the impeachment clock last week, we had to switch over to the 60 Minutes clock because we've got to really get closer and closer.
Really detailed now.
Now, we were talking before the show, myself and our young producer, Ryan Nilsson, in the booth, and just sort of going over what it actually means, because there are plenty of people who think that, oh my gosh, he's going to get impeached. And this is not what Ryan says, but there's a variety of things that people think. There's people who think like, okay, so then Mike Pence is president. Then you're going to have people that think like, okay, so then that means that Hillary's president. And then there's other people who are like, yeah, but was Pence really, innocent? Isn't Nancy Pelosi president? And then other people just want Baby Yoda to be president. And that's Ryan in the booth. But so I think it's a safe bet, and please stop me if you feel differently. It's a pretty safe bet that impeachment would pass in the House because of the margin that Democrats have. Right. I think you can get a couple who, for whatever reason, a couple of Democrats who feel like, I'm just going to vote present. I want to kind of stay out of this. But I think it's a safe bet that's going to pass. Chelsea, you feel anything different than that?
I'm afraid to say.
Yeah.
Because anytime I'm like, oh, yeah, this is pretty sure.
Yeah, I was with you on election night. I remember.
Yeah.
Who the heck knows? So
Have the champagne ready and be like,
on
impeachment.
this one, I'm going to vote present.
Oh, okay, so you're gonna vote president. Scott, can you be a little bit more firm in your stance there?
Well, the only thing I could say that could switch it is somehow at the last minute, if enough moderate Democrats are like, let's just give him censure, and then they can get the Senate and get a bipartisan censure vote. I don't think that's going to happen. So therefore, I'm going to say 100% yes for impeachment in the House and 89.9% removal and
so you feel
non-removal in the Senate.
89.9%
Yes,
that it
non-removal.
won't happen.
There's
All
a
right, so
few
you're going to
things.
give a 10.1% chance, and that's kind of the key because that's the next part that has to happen.
Right.
Because people may or may not remember or may not know that Bill Clinton was impeached but not removed from office. Richard Nixon resigned. Might not have been removed from office if he'd stuck around. Different time.
Probably
so
would have.
It's a little bit more likely in that case.
Yeah.
But, Clinton, it was just keep on. It was also the end of his second term.
Yes.
So it was like, what are we doing?
Well, also, I just think, again, it came up to a different time in the fact that it wasn't enough people to be able to say, enough senators to say, yes, we're going to remove him from office. And then, of course, the most famous one in the history books is Andrew Johnson, who was only one vote short of being removed from office. And that was, you could say, a lot of people were saying this one's politically motivated. You could really say that one was very politically motivated.
And just imagine how much he spent to make sure that he kept that one vote in his favor. That's nothing about him, just about politics in general. Like when it's only going to come down to one vote, it's like, what can I give you? An island? 2 islands? You want a state named after you?
Alaska?
Yeah, right. I know. Was the one vote that went in his favor from Jimmy Alaska, Jerry Nevada? I don't know. I don't know any of these things, and I know that doesn't really work in the timeline. It's just jokes.
Right.
But so then, what has to happen in the Senate? And this is just sort of bringing everybody up to speed.
An epiphany.
Do 51 have to vote? Is that what it has to be? The simple majority? Or does it? Yep.
That would be great if it was, because there is a very good chance that you could remove him.
If Democrats controlled the Senate right now and say that they had like a very slim majority, would they be able to change it to a simple majority? Not for this vote.
No, what they would be able to do, and what it'll take is to set the sort of the parameters and the rules of the way the trial will go. It only takes a simple majority. So, there's still a chance that Democrats will have a lot more power, let's say in the Senate than the Republicans do in the House, because in the Senate it's a little bit closer, more evenly split, and all it takes is a simple majority to set the rules that they'll need for the Senate trial. But to actually remove a president from office, which it is a hurdle to go through, but they did that on purpose. You have to have 2/3, which is 67 senators vote in favor of removing him, which is why it's never happened in the 2 other times. It came close again with Andrew Johnson, but it's never happened because it does take such a majority of senators to be able to do that.
And I think that you can pick off a couple of Republicans, Chelsea. There's, I know you don't want to prognosticate, but you feel like there are some people that you feel like your Collinses and your Murkowskis are people that you could be like, yeah, but what if we give you a new bridge in your district, or how about 10 bridges, or would you like a nuclear power plant? Whatever it takes at this point. We don't care. Do you want a coal factory? Just so that we can get your vote. I'm exaggerating. But, there are some people, and I'm just picking on them because, well,
those are
they're the most likely. But the idea that you could then get, well, they would need 18, wouldn't they? Or do they need 19? Sorry.
Well, you have 54 or 53 Republicans right now, and then you have 47
Democrats.
or independent Angus
right.
King. So yeah, you would need a good, good 20 Republicans.
You really need 20, yeah, and
to take it over.
Of course. So first of all, Chelsea, what I was saying to you before is the odds of there being 20 Republicans that you can convince that this is the way to vote. Vote with your heart, your conscience, vote with your district in mind of how they're leaning. 20 seems like a pretty high number.
Yes, it does. 20 is like a monumental number.
It might as well be 200.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I think, a sad state of affairs, but the way that the narrative has been spun on this, that this is only the result of people wanting to undo the results of the election, and liberals are mad about something, so they found any reason. I cannot believe how many people have bought into that, and I just see that from people on Facebook. I mean, I guess these could be trolls that are following people that I'm Facebook friends with, but they seem, the poster of the whatever post that got the situation started seems to respond to the person as in like they know them. It's not some like bot on their account.
Sure, right.
So that's the part that's really stunned me. And I do think, I'm like, wait, somebody could actually not be accepting of the 2016 results, and that there could still be valid reason to impeach and remove him. So the conservatives could be right about how upset liberals are, and that doesn't mean that there can't also be valid impeachable grounds. So I could just, I just hate his guts. I guess that's one of the things I hear conservatives say. Liberals just hate his guts. They can't stand him, and they just want to get rid of him. Yeah, okay, sure. Let's just say I agree with you. And he, I think, is guilty of committing high crimes and misdemeanors, term of art that we learned about last week. So yeah, I think both can be possible. But and the other unfortunate thing is how much influence public opinion has on the impeachment outcome. Like, there's never, in politics, you never see sort of what the public wants happening in Congress. But right now, for impeachment, it seems to be happening. But there's a reason that impeachment, I think, is something that Congress votes on and not the general public. Because the dealings of impeachment have to do with something a little bit more sophisticated, I think, than we would hold normal, I don't know. It takes a lot to understand what goes into it, and not just anybody. I mean, I would say myself, I would need a little bit more training. It's a lot harder than just general jury duty. And so I think that there's a reason why it was a job for House and Senate to do it, and not to be left to public opinion so
no,
much.
I mean,
and it
considering
heavily
how
is.
hard jury duty is for most people to do.
When I went to jury duty and
Right.
I heard people talking about, wait, what's the prosecution? What's the defense? Like, what's the difference? I was like, oh my God, we are in trouble.
And you just had to say, well, this side is Marcia Clark and this side is Johnny Cochran.
And everything was clarified.
Right. Well, I mean, for me, that's how they explained it to me, and I was a jury foreman. But
Oh, yikes.
wait, hey. Well, the worst is the people trying to get out of jury duty, where you're like, all of a sudden, when they're in the courtroom, they all of a sudden can't speak English. And the reason I say that is you heard them speaking English fine on their phone in the jury room, and then all of a sudden in front of the judge. When you're under oath, when you're under oath, all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, you don't, yeah. But anyway, so I saw a piece that it was a Bloomberg piece, and it's an opinion piece, but basically the idea is the case for impeachment grows stronger. Now, this is a hypothetical. If you feel like this was a simple legal case that you had to prove, like, well, here are the facts. You say it's a grand jury, so the grand jury, that's not that. If you're presenting a grand jury with these facts and they can rule yes, impeach, no, impeach, do you think that case has been made currently by the Democrats? You know, this is more of a hypothetical because, you know, the way that it gets voted on and then passed along is different. But if this were a regular court case, do you think that they have, you personally, and yes, we'll admit that you might be biased in wanting a specific outcome.
Right.
However, do you feel that they've made a strong enough case?
Okay, so I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say that this is complicated because usually, let's say a grand jury is, you know, put together, assembled to consider whether to charge you with robbery. Let's just say.
What have you heard?
I can't tell you that.
Okay, that's fair.
And then we're told, okay, there are, I can't remember, 3 factors to know if you committed robbery. You broke and entered, or took something by force or fear. I can't remember what the factors
but
are.
There's 3 like boxes that you check. Yeah.
3. I can't remember exactly. Law school has been like
Well,
11 years ago.
You're not that kind of a lawyer.
Right.
You know?
So there's a very specific kind of charge and then factors that you look for, and is there enough evidence to prove that, plus mindset. With something like obstruction of justice, abuse of power, there's not exactly those very neat boxes that you check off. There is somewhat like, you know, influence, undue influence. Okay, but the line of that is pretty blurred. It's a little bit more like, you know, how do you know porn? You know it when you see it.
Oh, I know it. Oh, sorry. I know it when I see it. Sure.
And so that's why it's a little bit.
Thank you, Ryan.
It's a little bit harder than something that a usual grand jury might consider.
Right, but you feel like they have they've made a very compelling case that the House will consider in the days ahead. Now, what we're speaking about before, Scott, this is just sort of more of like the more you know sort of thing. If it were to result in a tie with the, because you have 100 senators, so if you got if you got the 50-50. Who gets to vote to be the tiebreaker if it were to, you know, for this decision to remove from office?
Well, I mean,
well, that's the thing.
It wouldn't, because of the fact that's why you need so many senators to. So
right.
there wouldn't
I
be a
know,
tie.
but if it were tied, you know, this is just more
like
that
there
I
was
think.
one
This is more that I think.
vote needed.
Right, exactly. It
wasn't exactly 50-50.
Again, hypothetical.
Yeah.
That's not 50-50. Yeah. So it is, but it's tied. I know that that's the reason why it has to be 2/3. Who would get to cast that vote?
Yeah, right. So you leave Mike Pence up there,
Right,
where's
and
he
then
gonna go?
Mike Pence would be like, Donald Trump's a good
That would be
president.
amazing.
It's like
Yes,
Donald
it would
Trump's a
be.
good president, but you know who would be a better president?
right.
Me.
Because he knows he'll never be
But
president
of
on
course,
his own.
it would come down to what does Mother want him to do?
Right.
Mother, should I be president or should Mr. Trump be president? And she would probably say Mr. Trump. She's like, I don't think you're ready for it, Mike.
You'll never be ready for it, Mikey. You'll never be
Yeah.
ready
And
for it.
here's the other hard part. The hardest part of convincing a grand jury or a regular jury of any person's guilt has to do with their mindset, the mens rea. And so that's the one where it seems like my understanding of this human being makes it obvious where I think his mens rea was to have undue influence on having action taken to benefit him personally. Whereas somebody else could say, oh, I just see that he was trying to do what was best for the country. I mean, I don't know how you convince yourself of that, but people can just say that. And that's what makes this that's what gives people wiggle room out. I think it's intellectually lacking of any integrity, but I think that's what gives people the out. The very unfortunate out.
And I would just backtrack on just the general on impeachment, because, you know, you brought it up in your joke earlier about the, you know, being able to have a third election a year in Israel. And like the UK is going to vote again on Thursday. And in the US, we don't have that. So it's not like we have that parliamentary setup where if things are going wrong and there's the loss of confidence vote, that then it's back out to election time for people to go vote. And also impeachment is not there to nullify an election, even though people might say it is.
Where they get that from?
Impeachment has nothing to do with turning over an election. I understand if you're removing a president from office theoretically, but again, why would Democrats want to remove Donald Trump to be left with Mike Pence, who's even more conservative and supposedly Christian? The point of the impeachment is nothing to do with the election. It has to do with the co-equal branches of government being able to hold a president accountable for misdeeds or actions they feel are inappropriate.
Ryan approves.
So
my hand slipped.
He meant to boo you, actually.
Exactly.
He had the Jerry Springer boo that he meant to. But anyway,
But
sorry,
so
go ahead,
that is
finish your point.
what impeachment is there for. It's to be able, and because what you were saying, Chelsea, it's not as cut and dry as a regular court case, and even senators are going to have to learn how a trial actually happens in the Senate, because a lot of the senators were not there 20 years ago when we had the last impeachment trial. It's something that's different for them too, and it's not quite as easy, as we were saying, for Republicans to control it as much as it was easier for Democrats to control it in the House because of the split. And so the impeachment is there. Really, again, the House has a very wide leverage to say what is impeachable. And that's why it does make it difficult, because you can say abuse of power, but that's very broad. You can say obstruction of Congress, a little more easily noticeable there, because clearly he did obstruct Congress by not letting the people in his administration go and deal
Defied
with
subpoenas.
and defying subpoenas. So that's a little bit more cut and dry. But then what's going to happen in the trials? It's going to be a little bit looser. It's not going to be a regular trial in the sense, like you were saying, with the jury and how this is set up. It's going to be a little bit different. And of course, you have the Chief Justice that's going to be overseeing it. So it's not Mitch McConnell. And again, senators, and we'll get into this later, about senators will vote differently than House members, because senators deal with the entire state, whereas House members are very specific. And so that's why you can get these loud and crazy yelling Republicans, because they're dealing with a district that's 60+% supportive of them. So they can basically be extra kind of extreme. But senators have to think about their entire state, and some of these senators will have to deal, especially the ones that are going to be up for re-election, are going to have to deal with states that are not going to be as red as, you know, so so that's where it's going to be challenging for them if they're going to run in very purple states and have to be able to go home with a president and a party that's not have a high favorability like we see in Arizona and some other states. It's going to be more of a challenge for them to be able to be as extreme on that. So there's a lot that goes into it, but again, it's not about the voters and it's not about nullifying an election. It's about holding a co-equal branch of government accountable for what is seen as misdeeds.
Christian is very excited by this
constitutional
lesson.
I'm excited about all of it. I've been getting up at 5 a.m. every day that there's a hearing. It's at 8 a.m. Eastern time. What I did want to ask, I'll start with you, Chelsea, is the indications are that Mitch McConnell wants this, the Senate version of this, to be over very quickly, whereas President Trump would like it to be drawn out for a long period of time. I don't know, perhaps until December of next year. I'm just guessing, just a hunch. Which one do you think gives a bigger advantage to the president, if it's over like that, or if he gets to draw it out and talk about it?
Well, the bigger advantage is for him that he doesn't really know is to have it done and over with.
Yeah.
He thinks he's going to put on a show. He wants Nancy Pelosi to testify. I mean, this is just crazy. When you're on trial, yes, you can choose some witnesses, but like they have to be relevant to the case. And you can't have like your buddies go up and say what a great person you are. Character witnesses are not admissible unless unless that has something to do with anything. But then he wants Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff to testify, and that's somehow going to reveal the real corruption going on in this country.
Well, I mean, I don't know what he thinks that they're going to say while they're testifying,
I wish I knew.
Scott, same question. Do you think what do you think is better? Well, I'll ask you a two-part question. What do you think is better for President Trump, and what do you think is better for the American people?
Well, I think it's a little bit of what Chelsea was saying. The fact is, if you draw it out, I think the only advantage to Republicans is that you keep the Democratic senators that are going to be trying to go out to the first couple states from being able to campaign because they're going to be stuck in trial 6 days a week. So for Republicans,
6 days a week.
Yeah.
Really?
So for Republicans, that would be the only thing is that they have to be back and dealing with these all day trial. And then again, I think Donald Trump, in his delusional mind, thinks that again it's going to be like Chelsea was saying, it's going to be a show, and Republicans are going to control the whole thing, and they're going to be able to say, how bad the Democrats are and what a scam it is, and that's all they're going to say all day. And if they keep it going every day, that'll be able to rile up his base, which to some aspect I could see part of that being true, of just Republicans being able to control it, and obviously Republicans having the advantage in the Senate on the number of people that would vote and everything, and being able to make it look like this was all a political scam and hopefully get his base riled up. But it's better to be quick, be done with it, and move on. So if it's done in February, 6, 7, 8 months from now, in our fast-paced world now, most people are going to be already like, oh, it's forgotten, and it's they're going to move on to the next thing. So
but it's possible that they could impeach him on something else in the meantime.
Well, that's exactly.
Since he does things every day that are questionable.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised. What if he's the first president impeached twice?
I know, right? Which is possible. I mean, look, I think as you get further along, then it's going to be harder and harder to be able to say, let's do a whole let's do a whole thing again when you're now running for re-election, and a lot of those senators and House members are going to be in the middle of trying to run for election as well. That it seems less likely. But yes, I mean, that was part of the back and forth with the Democrats was, what articles are we going to do? Are we going to deal with every misdeed that he's done because you could be here forever? Or is it going to be what they originally talked about, keep it concise and simple and just focused on this Ukraine incident? And that's ended up being what they wanted to do, is just focus on the very narrow Ukraine issue and not the overall Mueller report, obstruction of justice, and all the other issues that he has on a daily basis.
And it seems like you've sort of both answered what my next question was going to be, that if this fails, do they go at it again before November 2020?
Depends what he does.
Fair.
Right.
I don't think they'll rehash this same
issue.
No.
Now,
because he'll be impeached, so regardless if he's removed from office, he will have the stain of impeachment on him regardless.
Right.
That's there permanently. It's like,
But calm yourself, Chelsea. If he's reelected,
am I excited about something?
No, not the opposite. So if he's reelected, do they then be like, well, I remember that we got him impeached that last time, let's do that again in like 2022? Or do you think that they try again at some point based on whether or not he gets reelected? Do you think that enters into it or not? Whichever one of you wants to jump in first.
It depends on what he does.
Right.
If there is some reason to suspect that he may have committed an impeachable offense, I hope that they investigate and go down this path again if that's where sort of the truth leads them. So it's not should they do this again just for the fun of it, but he does things constantly that are impeachment questionable, at least.
Quick follow-up. Do you think that were he reelected, they would do it again for the fun of it, just to make sure that they found something?
Just to make sure they found something.
Because
Christian, by these questions, it sounds like you really don't believe that these are valid.
No, I just don't.
Of
I just don't
impeachment.
think that they're going to pass the Senate. So
Right, they're probably right.
And if say that the Senate makeup is at least somewhat comparable, maybe have a couple more Democrats in the next session. So that's again like 2022. do you do it again just because, like, well, let's get another crack at the Senate? You know, there's plenty of stuff to choose from that we haven't even gotten to yet. You know, so let's do a hearing on this. It's not whether or not it's enough to get impeached. It's more of like, do you try again to get another crack at the Senate?
I don't think it's about just trying another crack at it. It's about if there are impeachable offenses, then you've got to go through with it.
Right.
Even though I understand it might not be the popular thing, it may not succeed. But if we are about following the Constitution, which is what I hear conservatives saying all the time, they're about following the Constitution. And yet, then they want to fight that this impeachment proceeding is even valid. Whatever. I mean, I think the only reason why they may not be so quick to look for his impeachable offenses is if they can get things done in the Senate. As much as I've heard conservatives saying this is a whole distraction from things that could be getting done if the Congress wasn't focused on impeachment. And right now that's not true because there are hundreds of bills waiting to be taken up in the Senate that Mitch McConnell is just simply ignored.
He to be fair, Mitch McConnell is on one incredibly long smoke break. You know, it's
that's not fair. And
what, because he smokes?
And you know, and if I had my political fantasy come true, where if Elizabeth Warren was not the next president, she was the next Senate Majority Leader.
Right.
I think they'd be getting lots of things passed that, you know, I guess they'd have to repass them in the House all over again and then take it up in the Senate. But, you know, the Senate could be coming up with things, too, that then have to go to the House. Like, things would be happening. Like, I'm wondering how okay would I be with just Trump stays, but then you have Elizabeth Warren as the Senate Majority Leader? Like...
No, I don't. Just only because of the Supreme Court and other things and the EPA and all the cabinets and all the officials.
Yeah. Which by the way, Supreme Court is the point that I was going to make on President Pence. You know, just where's that list of Supreme Court justices that President Pence would be like, oh, hey, I've got some ideas. So Scott, I mean, we've sort of circled around the same ground, but the idea that, were this to be unsuccessful in the Senate, what do you personally think it would take for the House to be like, all right, well, we should take this up again and see what the Senate would feel this time?
I don't think they would take it up again. I think, again, once it's done, he's impeached, and that case is done. And what Chelsea said, if he were to be reelected, which is very upsetting to even say, I think it would come down to, is he doing something that is worthy of impeachment and doing the same thing again and bring it to the Senate, regardless if you think it's going to pass or not. But I do believe that it would be very calculated because I think Democrats would run the risk of it then feeling like it's politicized. And, you know, Republicans have already warned now that they're going to just impeach the next Democratic president if they have the majority. And, you know, so now it's just going to it's going to lose its importance. And it becomes a politicized thing now where every Congress that's a different party than a president is just going to impeach for whatever grounds they want. So I think that's why they're running that risk, and Republicans have always been good about this, about just keeping everybody together and cohesive, even if a lot of these, like we've said, if Republicans had to vote anonymously in the Senate, the numbers would be a lot higher for removal of Trump than they would if they had to vote on the record. So they're very good about keeping everyone together, where the Democrats are a little bit more like, okay, vote your conscience, do what you want. And so that's why there might be a few Democrats that are concerned in the House of voting, like we said, in the Senate, maybe Joe Manchin if it came down to it. But I do believe that the Democrats would be very careful about what they would do in a second term with a president that theoretically, of course, Trump says he was going to run forever, but theoretically he's not going to be running again, and already has what we've talked about, a second term sort of support right now in the middle of his first term because of the way he has zero coattails. He wasn't able to take any big candidates across the finish line this fall, and you know, he lost so many seats, his party in 2018, that he's already a weekend, almost like a second term president. So at that point, I don't believe that they would really be motivated unless there was something so damning that they knew they could really make a big deal about it. But no, they're not going to relitigate the Ukraine thing. He's going to be impeached, and they'll be done with that.
Don't give the American voter too much credit or hardly any credit at all. If you just had to pick a number, percentage-wise, of how many voters would go to the polls in November, just under the assumption that President Trump is impeached but not removed from office. So what percentage of voters are going to see his name there on the ballot and be like, wait a minute, didn't that guy get peached or something? And be like, well, I can't vote for him. He can't be president anymore. Do you think that there are going to be people that go to vote that just don't understand what actually happened? And then that's the moment where they're like,
wow, Christian, I thought I had lost faith in Americans, and you've really lost faith in Americans.
I mean, by the way, that extends beyond America. Don't think that, you know, I think that America leads the world in a lot of ways. This is just one. I've lost faith in humanity. And some of the animal kingdom too. Not all of it. No, just some.
Wow.
All right. Mostly gazelles and crocodiles and stuff. You can stand for crocodiles? Yeah, I didn't think so. But do you think that there are people who aren't going to really understand what happened, and then when they see his name on the ballot, like, oh, can I vote for him? Or do you think that if you were one of those election poll place, you know, day of workers,
Volunteer workers,
yeah, people came over and were like, Can I vote for him? It's just a question, not should I vote for him. What do you do? What do you do in that situation? Do you be like, oh, you should step out of line and, you know, I'm going to Google something for you, you know? Do you have a phone? I was going to say, do you have a smartphone? But clearly not. Do you just have a phone?
Yikes.
Let's call somebody. Do you think that people will be confused, though? I'm sort of stretching it into, you know, ridiculous territory. But do you think that President Trump's impeached, not removed from office, then on election day, people are confused?
Wow. I had lost faith in people, but
it's just confused. And we'll keep in mind that, you know, there theoretically will have been debates in October, but by the way, I'm not 100% sure that Donald Trump's going to debate anybody because he's going to be like, I don't need to, and it's only going to hurt me. So if there aren't big, that's not a surprising idea.
I mean, recently, what was it that came out? I just remember the acronym PISA, P-I-S-A, some student assessment thing from around the world.
Yeah.
How the U.S. is like 28th now in, is that math for reading or is that the average of the two? I can't remember.
I think it's counting to 28. We're 28.
I'm like, we're really falling down.
Yeah.
Where it makes that question like a valid question.
Of course it's a valid question. I'm asking it because it's my slightly faith, amusing to ask, but
my faith had wow.
So you think people do you think that people won't be confused and they'll know either like, okay, if his name is on this piece of paper or this touch screen or however people are voting, they're like, okay, so I can vote for him if I want to, but I'll instead choose to vote for Hillary Clinton because, of course, she's running against.
Yikes! Now that level, I just can't go down to that level. But
what do you think, Scott?
I just don't even.
Do you think people will be confused? And there's like several parts. I like added layers to it. So like the first is, could people be confused? The second, would they be more confused if he decided like, yeah, I love free TV time, but I'm not going to debate anybody. That's only going to hurt me. Because by the way, it would.
Yeah. I mean, I
mean, unless it's Biden, then I don't think it'll hurt him.
I wouldn't put it past him to not debate. But sure, there's probably going to be.
He loves them too much.
I think, the TV time and everything. But if he again is concerned and it's really close,
he doesn't know concern. Even if he should be concerned,
it's true.
It's fair.
But I wouldn't put it past him either way. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he chose not to say they're rigged or whatever. But sure, there may be a handful of people that are confused because the only thing that I will say that. Defending those confused people is this would be the first time that an impeached president would be up for re-election.
Correct, yeah.
So in that sense, it's different because obviously Bill Clinton was at the end of his second term. We never got there with Nixon because he resigned. And Andrew Johnson, even though he could have run again, had chosen already not to run again, so he wasn't even in the mix.
Right.
So this would be the first time it would happen, so I could understand people would be like, oh, this is weird. But again, if his name's on there, then I don't see where the confusion would lie. But it is the first time, which I could imagine maybe for some people it would be a new thing. And so maybe there's some confusion. I will give them the slight benefit of the doubt, but I don't envision that many people. I think it would be a nominal handful of people. Because if the name's on the ballot, then you can vote for that person. That doesn't mean that you're be restricted. If you don't, then that, like you said, Chelsea, that's a little scary.
And just because of how summarily it was dismissed, we talked about this last week. I didn't realize the length of the interview. Hillary Clinton talked to Howard Stern for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, no, I didn't even get to it because once I knew how long it was, I was like, oof.
It was fascinating, actually.
I heard it was
great.
great.
Was really interesting.
No, I heard it was great. But
And I'm just saying,
two.
2.5 hours doesn't mean, to me, that doesn't scream 100% definitely not running for president. That says, talk to me after the new year. It's a long interview. I mean, look, she really want to sell her book that she wrote with Chelsea that badly that she's going to talk to Howard Stern for 2.5 hours. Anyway, that I should really have saved that for when Tamra's here because of how much it annoys her. But we have yet to make our wager, which hopefully we'll be able to announce on this week's show. Were you both here last week?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, but I don't think you were.
No.
Yeah, and we, Tamra and I have not figured it out. I was just like, oh, she's definitely running. And Tamra said, well, she's definitely not. And Scott, you had your bets a little bit. You think probably not, but you can't rule it out now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Never rule it out.
Finally coming over to the dark side with me.
I would never rule it out, and I've said that from the very beginning,
That's true.
too.
That's true. You can never 100% rule it out.
Because she's wanted it for so long.
Yeah.
And maybe she'll be like, third time's a charm. Like, she's not going to get...
Oh, my God.
I'm just saying, I do agree. She will not rule it out.
Although maybe she's intimidated by the way that Mike Bloomberg is taking the country by storm. So anyway, that's a story for the new year, I'm sure. If it happens, wink. But I wanted to talk about, we've mentioned him in passing, your friend Mitch McConnell. And by your friend, I mean because, Scott, you tweeted him more than anybody I know.
Yep.
He has said that, there's this USMCA trade bill that there seems to be at least some degree of common ground on. And according to Mitch McConnell, the Senate will take it up, not now or in the near future when it could be useful to do so. But he's using it as we'll do that after impeachment. Because I do believe that this is someone who can literally only do one thing at a time. He can walk or chew gum. And again, Chelsea, you tisked me for talking about the long smoke break, but he does smoke a lot, and I don't know if he can do anything else while he's smoking. I think he has to put out the cigarette and actually be like, oh, where are these bills that I'm supposed to be looking at?
Come on, people of Kentucky, you've got to do better.
I mean, so the other guy they vote for is Rand Paul. And I mean, on his haircut alone, you just don't understand nobody can vote for him. He's just taking politics completely out of it.
At least they got rid of Matt Bevin, so that's something for
that's
you.
true.
And,
Wait,
and the
speaking
new
of Rand
governor's
Paul, what do you
already
think
inaugurated.
of paying off your student loans by taking out of your retirement account?
Oh my God.
So you're
can't-
assuming that we have retirement accounts,
no.
but I don't know. I mean, I feel like your retirement account should be for your retirement. It's almost like, using your savings bond to pay for video games. You should just save it.
Shows how out of touch he is.
Yeah.
That most people don't really have retirement accounts
Right.
going because of the student loan. So where you
Right.
get the money in the first place to have money in a
Exactly.
retirement account.
And if they did, and they're taking out for student loans, now they don't have a retirement account for later on, and now
I think I read a little bit about where you can borrow and then
Yes.
you have to
pay it back and over a certain a
That-
mortgage almost and you have
mean,
a long period of time to pay it back. But
the
it's
only
still-
place I'll give him credit is where he's saying Republicans need to put forth plans about student loans.
Sure, because the Democrats are spending a lot of time talking about student loans, so you should definitely have a position on
But
it.
this one is wow.
Well,
It's clear he doesn't understand the life of somebody with student loans.
I would like to call his office and ask, would I be able to pay off my student loans with my future lottery winnings? Because I'm sure I'm going to win one day. And I know that's a state issue. But at the same time, can I borrow from that? I'm definitely going to win one of these days. So can I I just want to pay it off in, one fell swoop. All right. I'm good for it. I'm definitely going to win one day.
What if, I don't know, instead of, I don't know, I was trying to think of something equally outlandish. Instead of money paying to federal income taxes, I take that money and pay off my student loans.
That's a great idea.
I mean,
that, of course, the more realistic thing is if you could, somewhere on your taxes, not the whole thing, but like, can we put like $3 of my what I'm paying the government towards, these 3 issues that are important to me? And of course, the IRS would laugh so hard that they would probably spit up on your paper because it's just that funny. But I wanted to get back to this idea that Mitch McConnell's like, we're not doing anything until after this impeachment thing. So you move along, and then we'll move along, and then it'll be 2021. Scott, because you are our resident expert on Mitch McConnell, what do you think about this approach to, the House is handling the impeachment right now. So the Senate could do something if they wanted to.
Well, I think it goes back to Mitch McConnell making it, trying to put it back on the Democrats to blame them and be like, look, if we weren't in the middle of this impeachment trial, we'd be able to get this trade deal finalized. But unfortunately, because the Democrats are wasting our time with this political sham, we have to get through that. And once we've finished that up, we can get back to the business of the American people. So it's going to be his whole tactic to blame the Democrats, because that's what they've been doing now for the past several months on the deal, which, again, the Democrats had said from the very beginning they had to compromise and meet some of the concerns Democrats had. And once they got a little bit closer, they were open to doing the deal. And that's exactly what happened. And I think, again, it was a brilliant strategy of Nancy Pelosi to be able to show that they could walk and chew gum at the same time, because that's the big thing. The do-nothing Democrats from Donald Trump and now the rest of Republicans saying in Congress, they're so focused on impeachment, they can't do anything else. So what did she do this morning? She talked about what articles they were going to impeach him on, and then they said they agreed to the trade deal an hour later. So that was a good strategy on her part to be able to say, look, we are capable of governing as well as dealing with impeachment and
accountability at the same time.
Yes, so it now puts it back on Republicans. But again, Mitch McConnell's going to twist it around and say we can't do anything until we finish this impeachment trial that the Democrats have now put on us, and then we can go back.
How many things can you do at the same time? I feel like walk, chew gum, I'm all right. But walk, chew gum, and text, I don't know that I could probably do all 3 of those. Chelsea, do you
watch people try. The thing that seems to struggle is the walking.
Yes. Yeah, the 2 I can do. I think once I try to do a 3rd thing. So, we're not asking too much. We're not asking any elected official ever to do 3 things at the same time. We're not asking President Trump to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken, tweet while he's watching Fox and Friends. And yes, I realize that means he's eating Kentucky Fried Chicken in the morning, but of course, what's wrong with that? Chelsea, what's wrong with that? And then do a 4th thing. We're not asking anybody to do all those things, but getting to do 2 things is what seems to be the problem. So obviously there are a few places we could go, but only a few minutes. And before I introduce another topic, I'm going to put you on the spot, Chelsea. Is there something burning that I haven't gotten to yet? Because I hate when I leave out what is important to you.
Wow, thank you.
What's new in corruption? What's old in corruption?
I haven't. I haven't gone fishing for it.
Because usually the fish are just all floating at the top dead. You don't actually have to go fishing. Yeah.
Right. I think the only. Maybe because I relate to it, this interesting thing about Elizabeth Warren's side hustle as a lawyer consultant for a real estate group, and she tried to argue for them to not be held liable to clean up some environmental issues that they had to potentially deal with after a bankruptcy thing, and it looking like this is Elizabeth Warren being out of integrity with her sort of usual brand and whose side she's usually on. And first I just thought, wow, look at me and Elizabeth Warren are the only 2 people I know that have lawyering as their side hustle. And then feeling like, wow, I guess by that standard, I could never run for public office, because 99.9% of the cases that I work on, I'm always on the side of the injured worker. But there's been a couple of times that I have been on the other side. And in one of those cases, man, if that was on video, that would be epic, because I legally shred the person claiming injury. Because
it was just obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, I almost wish it was on video, but I'm kind of glad it's
probably
not.
Better that it's not. Yeah.
But if you look at that, you're like, oh my God, how could you say that this person is an advocate of working people. And so I think there's like, you're not 1,000% consistent. And I can see how actually in me going after this one person who I thought was clearly lying, that's actually holding up the integrity of the whole system a little bit better. But anyway, I
was going to say, it goes back to, like you said, people have a history, work history of life, especially someone like Elizabeth Warren, who actually was a Republican at one point in time and has been around for many, many years. And like you said, it has a side hustle. I think the other big issue is Mayor Pete with his consulting years. There were 3 years, and McKinley won't let him get out of his NDA and talk about non-disclosure agreements. And people are like, well, what companies was he consulting for, and how does that influence his potential, standards on what he would support and with companies or that he supported when he was consulting. I'd also add with the corruption is that Duncan Hunter finally is going to resign.
I cannot believe how long that took.
And that he's decided to plead guilty to the corruption that they blatantly did, to hopefully help his wife after how he threw his wife under the bus too. Yeah. So that was a big corruption thing.
Does he have to pay the money back?
Hopefully, but of course, I think it'll be unlikely.
Anything about that part.
It'll probably be like Betsy DeVos when the taxpayers pay her fine. But so it's great to see someone who was blatantly corrupt finally. But I was kind of disappointed. I don't think there was much Nancy Pelosi could do. But the fact that he was still in the House all this time, and then he's like, "Oh, I'll just resign sometime after the holidays." Like very vague.
Yeah,
it's very frustrating when you saw Katie Hill was like, "I'm out," and it was like right away. And here's Duncan Hunter still there. And just kind of like, oh, I'll resign sometime after the holidays. But it is a good sign that someone who was so blatantly corrupt is finally going to be out of office. So, I'm sure Darrell Issa will try to swoop in there and move in to run for that.
Well, let's not vote Scott Moore out of office. Let's make sure that he sticks around. But he may or may not be with us next week. And you'll find us next week on Friday. Kind of in like the early afternoon time, at least Eastern time. It'll certainly be the afternoon. So we'll let you know exactly when, because there's another debate on Thursday night. So you will be able to find us next Friday. And that'll be our last show of 2019. And I don't know, the show will probably just kind of go away after that, because what's going to be interesting to talk about in 2020? I don't see anything. If we can find something, maybe we'll do the show next year.
But only 7 candidates now for the debate next week, so it's down to 7.
I'm so glad, but none of them is Marianne Williamson. So that, from an enjoyment standpoint, that's disappointing. Chelsea, where do people find you?
At Chelsea Galicia.
And Scott, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter telling Mitch McConnell he's a hypocrite at sman80. That's sman80.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next Friday. Bye.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.